those scare tactics, they work. So when you hear something, you're going to remember it. You can never do anything right, it seems like. No matter what dietary pattern you follow, you will never get it right if anyone else is looking at your diet. 5-10 years from now, what we're watching unfold with the carnivore diet, very worrisome. People go to these extremes because they feel like maybe they haven't been heard by the doctors. They've tried so many things, and they are struggling, so that ultimately they try to find something that works, and now they finally don't feel like they have to hop on the internet and look for this information themselves, which can lead them astray, because people can sound very convincing. People are worried about sugar in certain fruits and certain vegetables, and they'll stay away from it, when ultimately the sugar is a natural form. We know that. The form it comes in, so like your fruits, your vegetables, there's so many vitamins and minerals in there that it's like the biggest bang for your buck that you can get. Yeah, personally, I could never promote something that didn't have data to back it up.
Welcome back to the Plant Fuel Podcast Legends. I'm your host and vegan nutritionist, Callum, and I'm absolutely pumped to have you here for another epic episode. Today we're diving into the biggest nutrition myths that keep popping into my inbox week after week. We've got the incredible Kasia Nykaza joining us. As some of you might know her as Plant Healthy Habits RD on Instagram. Kasia is a registered dietitian with a wealth of knowledge, and together we're breaking down the nitty-gritty of everything from sugar, natural, refined, and everything in between, to the carnivore diet trend and why carbs aren't the enemy everyone makes them out to be. Plus, if you've ever wondered why transition to whole foods might leave you feeling a little bit bloated, or why your bathroom trips may have become a bit more frequent, we've got the answers for you. We're talking fats, fitness community positivity, and talking all things scare tactics in the process. This episode is jam-packed with insights that are going to make your nutrition journey a whole lot smoother and a lot more enjoyable. But before we kick things off, I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for your support. But if I could ask one small favour, if you're loving the podcast, please take a moment to rate it, drop it a comment, or whatever your platform allows. This not only makes my day, but also helps the podcast grow so I can keep bringing you the guests and content you're hungry for. All right, let's dive in. Good morning or afternoon. I think is it evening there? Afternoon?
Evening, yeah, the latter half of the day, 7:43 p.m. So good morning to you.
Good evening to you. Time differences are becoming more and more hard to keep track of, being this side of the world. It's getting harder, especially doing things until you realize when you get to the States and there's like 5 or 6 different time differences as well. And they're so close to each other, it can get confusing.
Yeah, especially you speak with a lot of people from the States, right? Like who hop on your podcast.
Yeah. So like Los Angeles isn't too bad to speak to because they're not too far behind. Whereas somewhere like New York is like 14 hours. Which is at really inconvenient times of sometimes 5 a.m. or sometimes like going into like midnight that I'm speaking to somebody. But sometimes you do get something that's a bit easier.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
That's no worries at all. So I was actually just watching a video of you a second ago, just before you came on, of you lifting what looked like the biggest dog I've ever seen.
The biggest dog. Yes, I have dogs and they are big.
Yeah, like when you lifted, I'm assuming him, when you lifted him up, bigger than you, basically.
On his hind feet, he is taller than me, yes.
Yeah, I was just fascinated with how big he was, and you just kind of like picking him up like it was nothing.
Yeah, again, I say this is why I work out, because as much as I love animals, I love all dogs, I love large breeds, and I will continue to adopt the larger breeds until I can no longer physically take care of them, and I hope that's never, but gotta keep myself active and strong to keep housing my little dogs. I call them little because I'm so used to how big they are. But I know most people see them, they're like, oh my gosh, you could ride them, they're as big as a horse.
Yeah, that's literally what I thought when I saw the video. I was like, this is one of the biggest dogs I have ever seen. Do you adopt them all?
Do I adopt them all? Yeah. So the whole adopt, don't shop. I do that. There's a lot of good dogs out there. My first one, I'll show you. That is Mustard. That was my first dog, and I adopted him. So since then, I have adopted 2 more. He's passed, but he kind of started the whole, why don't people adopt? Why don't we rescue more animals? There's such good dogs, cats, any kind of animal out there. And yeah, he was just like a great dog, and my dogs since have been great. So I volunteer at the shelter. I promote it because every dog deserves a loving home. And it's really nice when I get compliments of how well behaved my dogs are, and they ask where I bought them. And that opens the door to adopt, don't shop. So it organically comes up, which is great.
That tattoo is incredible. Oh yeah, for anybody that is listening, if you do click on the video, the most incredible tattoo of a dog on your arm.
Thank you. I'll let my tattoo artist know. I'm getting more in a couple months, so there's more dogs.
More of your dogs, or just other things?
Of my dogs. Stay tuned. You might have to have me on in a few months.
Yeah, just a tattoo show instead. I love it.
Your podcast theme has now totally changed.
So I think this episode we actually have a lot to chat about. I've kind of like collated a list of like common questions I get in my inbox, and I like probably on the daily. And I assume you probably get very much the same kind of questions as well. Us both very much being in the same industry, like we get asked many questions, and I feel like no question is a stupid question. However, like some of these, I think there's like lack of nutritional knowledge around nutrition, or like, you go on like Instagram or TikTok and there's very polarizing views, and I think people are getting more and more confused on a daily basis of what nutrition looks like, what actual health looks like, and just kind of trying to live that day-to-day life as healthy as possible, I guess, but not knowing where to start. Before we dive into those deep topics, who is I'm gonna ruin your name again here.
Come on, we can practice.
Kasia Nykaza. Oh no, Nykaza. Oh, I knew it.
One more time. I'll let you go one more time, Callum, before I take it over.
Kasia Nykaza.
Yes. So, you got it.
I'm so glad. I can't keep doing this on the podcast of ruining people's names.
No, this is great. It's fun. I enjoy it. So who am I? I'm a plant-based dietitian. I think we know that. Big animal advocate, especially adopt, don't shop. I don't know what else about me. I'm a twin. I love nutrition. I love the health industry. My goal is, at the end of the day, kind of to leave the world in a better place than I came into it. And that also goes with like helping people. I've seen so many times how complicated, I don't want to say Instagram, because people find all kinds of outlets to get their nutrition information from. I see how complicated it can make it for people, that people just get so tired of it, they do nothing. So just making life, health easier for people, like one step at a time, where they get that light bulb moment and become like, aha, I can do this. So just like empowering people to make good choices, that they can come up with their own ideas how to implement it themselves. So that's who I am. I want to be their little cheerleader, be in their corner and help them out. And that's my goal, I guess, at the end of the day.
That's a great goal as well. And I think as well, like, as you said, like, people can go on like, Instagram and get their nutrition knowledge, and it not always be, the best advice. Whereas you could actually jump onto somebody that is, like yourself, that's an expert or in these fields, and actually get some advice that's not polarizing as well, in comparison to what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And I think as well, like even more in the last like probably 6 or 7 years, more the social media's become more of the giant it is. Like nutrition has become more and more and more polarizing, and I don't think you can't just jump onto like your page anymore without completely seeing utter crap.
a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah, that is a good word to use.
and I think as well, sometimes it's actually coming from a good place, but this person's also been misinformed. And sometimes it's just like the loudest voices in these certain niche communities that are just getting more airtime than the usual person. Much like,
I think we both know what area you're talking about without having to say out loud what it is.
Yeah, I think most people that listen to this podcast, I think, know what area we're on about, and yeah, we can just say it is the carnivore diet. But also at the same time, there's like, you know, other movements like the keto movement, which obviously can have its benefits for certain people. But I think it'd be wrong of me to say that like we in our own kind of movement don't have our own biases as well, because you do get people on a very, very whole foods plant-based diet that also are the other end of the spectrum of being like, this is going to do this, this, and this, when it's not overly the exacts.
Yeah, I find that, especially, I don't know if you're in any of the Facebook groups when it comes to like vegan diets, plant-based diet, you see someone will ask a question and it may pertain to them eating something ultra processed, and someone will jump on them and be like, if you eat like this, like basically it's poison, and it's not necessarily poison. So it's like you can never do anything right, it seems like, in any, no matter what dietary pattern you follow, you will never get it right if anyone else is looking at your diet. And I think that can become like worrisome to people, because then they don't want to share what they eat, and then they don't want any guidance, and then they feel like you said, there's no stupid question, which there's not, but then they don't feel comfortable asking like what should they even be doing, because they just get attacked just by asking a simple question.
No, I completely agree with that. Even like I'm not so much on a diet, like the dietary vegan pages on Facebook. However, I am, or like plant-based pages. However, I am on like, you know, a few kind of like Sydney vegans and London vegans and stuff like that, where I will see somebody, as you said, somebody ask a question and then somebody will jump on. Like the other day, somebody, I can't remember what it was, but it actually annoyed me more than anything, where somebody was asking just a genuine question about vegetables. It wasn't anything like overly polarizing, but somebody was like, carrots aren't like carrots are a man-made food. We shouldn't be eating carrots. Like something to do with it, like alkaline. And I'm like, stop making it worse for people. Like, stop making it worse. Like, carrots are fine to eat. Like, I don't think anybody's telling you that like you shouldn't be eating carrots. But this person had it in their head that things were like kale and carrots and parsnips and things like that. But all these like real insane man-made things. And yeah, I'm guessing that probably from what they started off as, they've evolved. But like I wouldn't say they're like an unhealthy food. They're probably one of the most nutritious. But yeah, we're still getting polarizing views from this side as well.
Yeah, and I think if someone wants to eat a vegetable and they're open to eating it, eat it. I know I'm kind of like diverting on that one, but the whole carrot situation reminds me of a story when first year as a dietitian, I was working in a hospital. I was consulted for diabetes education by one of the physicians. I end up in this patient's room, and it was a smaller hospital. We were talking about ways to balance her plate, and she told me, I don't like any fruits, I don't like any vegetables, I won't eat them. So after we got to talking some more, she was open to eating carrots. So the big win here, big win. When she first told me blanket statement, no carrots or no veggies, no fruits. Somehow this physician was walking by as I'm talking to her about carrots, and he yells at me how I could be advising carrots to her because of how much sugar is in the carrots. And I said, again, I'm not going to have this whole confrontation debate with a doctor, because I'm sure she respected him, knowing that he's in a higher position than me. And so I let him have his say, and I let him walk out, and I said, do you feel comfortable eating carrots? And she goes, I guess. She was like worried to even now eat it because he interjected. And so again, that education and from like certain providers and like just knowing people's like preferences, what they're willing to do, what's a better step, what's more nutrient dense to what they're already eating before. I think sometimes providers don't have enough time to hear it all out. Like, he just knew she had diabetes, uncontrolled, and all of a sudden this whole sugar debate. And I know that's a big thing. People are worried about sugar in certain fruits and certain vegetables, and they'll stay away from it, when ultimately the sugar is a natural form. We know that. The form it comes in, so like your fruits, your vegetables, there's so many vitamins and minerals in there that it's like the biggest bang for your buck that you can get. There's no reason to shy away from it. And, there's studies that have stated that eating more fruits and vegetables have correlated to better like health outcomes. So why are we now demonizing them when they're the natural form of sugar?
I think that was actually going to be my first topic that came up, which is I was actually going to save this one till last. However, I feel like it's the one I see more than any other topic is that obviously sugar is toxic. And I do think that people do forget that sugar is like an umbrella term for many different sugars. Like obviously you have like your refined sugars, and like then we have sugars in fruits and various different types. And like the umbrella term for sugars gets demonized more than the actual different strains of sugars that you get.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to define which ones we're on about. And obviously, as you say, sugars in fruit and vegetables, absolutely fine. Refined sugars, I think for me personally, like I don't have an issue with refined sugars if you're not eating them on a day-to-day basis, like you're not having them with every meal, and it is like you're being very strategic with how you're taking or eating them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that, and I do like the whole food freedom, that kind of group of dietitians that are out there, because most people know when we restrict something for so long, it makes us want it that much more. So by giving yourself like no, you can't have sugar, ultimately we tend to might eat it more than we wanted to in the first place, and just like consume a larger volume. I mean, there are guidelines to recommendations how much added sugar we should be eating. There's obviously reasons why those guidelines are in place for the added sugar. We know that too much is not a good thing. They can lead to like obesity, which can lead to insulin resistance. So yes, there are reasons, but we also know toxic equals poison. And I know you and I eat sugar, added sugar, and we're here on this podcast. We're not dead yet. So here we are. But what it comes down to, just like watching how much like added sugar we're eating and things, making better choices, and just not getting all our calories from these like ultra processed foods that have so many grams of sugar that might not be providing us with enough nutritional value, that now we're just crowding out the foods that are more nutrient dense, and we're just eating a bunch of added sugar. But I definitely think there's room in our diet for it. But like you said, you have to be strategic depending on your goals, what it is that you are aiming for at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think like it's the dose really that makes things toxic and not toxic. Like for instance, if you were to drink like 4 or 5 cans of Coke a day, that's a bit different from having like maybe a Coke maybe once a week or maybe twice a week. Like there's a giant difference, and obviously like nutrition or health is subjective to so many different people. But like if I was to like I wouldn't advise anybody to be having however many cans of Coke a day plus like however many like processed foods with those refined sugars. But like if you're gonna eat it once a week, sure. If your diet's like a 80% healthier diet than like the average person, sure.
Mm-hmm. And again, we think about like our needs and based on like even like athletic performance. So I know you've ran before. You were a runner or did some kind of marathon. I'm not a runner. I tried to be at one point. It just wasn't enjoyment for me. So I'm like, why am I kind of punishing myself? I'll find different activity and movement that I enjoy, which everyone should. But like glucose, like you have to use so much of your carbs, your glycogen stores. You need energy to finish a long run. So think of like even glucose packets. That's technically sugar, but it helps your performance and overall well-being because you're running, and it helps you with exercise. So like you said, it just depends on your situation.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like the whole running thing. I've tried out the little gels that people have, which are basically just sugar. They don't work for me.
Okay.
Personally. No, they just kind of give me stomach cramp. However, okay. I normally have like a little pouch full of like dates and things like that, which are like in fruit wise probably very sugar dense, but also very carb dense as well. But that works for me, and like I'm not eating 20 of those every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. Like you can find alternatives to sometimes like the sugar that you may need, but again, like for you to eat those dates versus someone else who doesn't need a run, it always comes down to like individual differences in needs. So it's hard when people blast that information on social media and just have this like umbrella thing of sugar is toxic. It's like, well, how much? Like you said, like the dose makes the poison. Like what are your needs? Some people need it for fuel, like you when you run.
Yeah, and I think as well, like it does. These things do get demonized, and sometimes they get demonized for the right reasons. People have the right intentions about demonizing these things, but also don't live in most people's realities. Like for instance, like I grew up in a household that had fizzy drinks or pop or whatever you call them, and it becomes people's regular habits. And like if they've grown up and they're on this like health journey at let's say 30 years old, after having 30 years of having these in their life as a regular, it's then ingrained into that person. So cutting that out completely is going to be such a hard a hard shift in comparison to maybe just cut down. Like you don't have to be like consuming these every day. You could have like one every 2 days and then or one every day, but like shifting your dietary patterns to be like as healthy as possible while including this as well.
Absolutely. I think just because you coach people as well, that complete 180s don't always stick. They don't always work because you're so far from what you've been doing that it's not easy to maintain. So those like baby steps to get there. And I think sometimes people hear like, oh, I need to start my diet on Monday. So they think like all these foods are cut out. And it's like, well, you don't have to. We can kind of work some of your favorite stuff in. You don't have to do a complete 180 from what you were doing before. Don't look at what someone else is doing. You're on your own journey.
I've been exactly the same for that as well. Like years and years ago, like I think I was very much in that mindset that if I wanted to go lose some weight or do something, I'd have to cut out so much. Or especially like with like me going plant-based, I was kind of like, oh, I want to go completely whole foods. And whole foods, when you've come from a lifestyle of not whole foods, is the hardest thing in the world. And like you're cutting out things that you really enjoy, and it's also not the most fulfilling dietary pattern, like a whole foods plant-based diet. Like obviously the majority of my foods now are whole foods plant-based, but the strategic like proteins as well as like your tofu's, tempehs, TVP and things like that. But at first I was like, oh, I can get all this from beans, and like you slowly start to realize that this is not going to fulfill you, because it's not as, although it can be very tasty and very like nutritious, and that you can't be eating that every day when you do fancy a pizza.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I agree with you. You have to include some of your favorite foods in there. Otherwise, it won't work in the long run. And if we think about how many years we have left to live, hopefully a lot for most of us, it needs to be sustainable, whatever we're doing. And you mentioned earlier, like if 80% of what you're doing is you have a great foundation, like you do have that wiggle room of having some of the things like you enjoy. And again, like if you enjoy like the pizza that you wanted, there's some protein in there. I'm sure there's like enriched flour in there, so you're getting some vitamins and minerals. It's not trash. Like you are getting something, so we can't just demonize it. But yeah, it is something that you enjoy, and that's what's gonna help you get to your next meal, because you're like, yeah, I got that craving, that's what I wanted, and then continue on eating those nutrient dense foods.
Yeah, and I think like as long as somebody isn't doing that whole pizza, like for instance with the pizza scenario, if someone's not doing that every single day, then you're fine. But if you are doing that every single day, then like there's room for improvement. That like we need to be optimizing, like our dietary patterns, not to be eating like a pizza every day, along with like a few other things that I wouldn't consider being the healthiest, and maybe then having a salad alongside that doesn't really kind of account for like the nutritional properties, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we do have an issue more that obviously people are more getting like medical advice these days from influencers more than they are like coming to you or coming to like a physician or a doctor. They'll go online, they see an influencer, get their advice from that, or like TikTok, and like some of these things aren't true and aren't down to science. And there's obviously a giant group of like voices, normally the obviously loud and obscure ones, that spout things. But when it comes down to like, the carnivore diet, the keto diet, or a few of the other kind of like dietary patterns, people are like, oh, like I've cured these symptoms, like I feel amazing, like all these things that I had, like my eczema, things like that, all disappeared. And this happens on a regular basis. And yeah, I think you see it more very much in the in the carnivore movement. You do see it in the whole food, like the very whole foods plant-based movement as well. And then you realize that it's not exactly what they're eating, it's what they've cut out.
Nail that one on the head. So yes, I agree. It's more so what they cut out, why they feel good. And, we have to sympathize with them, which I'm sure you do. People go to these extremes because they feel like maybe they haven't been heard by the doctors. They've tried so many things and, they are struggling. So that ultimately they try to find something that works. And now they finally find relief. But yeah, some of these diets are extreme elimination diet, like the carnivore diet. You've cut out so many foods. So yes, if you had a trigger food that, that came in your diet frequently that you didn't know was causing symptoms, and all of a sudden you cut everything out, you don't know what ultimately was that trigger food. So you're going to feel good, and now you're afraid to introduce anything back in because you just categorize everything as the triggers when it could just be one or two things. So that's the scary part, because we know eating a variety of foods offers a lot of nutritional benefits, because every food kind of has its own high in certain things, vitamins, minerals. That's why we always talk about the whole food plant-based diet, but eating a variety. And it's just sad to see that people think like the carnivore diet is the answer, the keto diet is the answer, even though the keto diet now, they may have eliminated a lot of like ultra processed foods, and some that may have not made them feel good, and now all of a sudden they feel good because they're just eating more whole foods.
Yeah, that is. It is sad to see, and like, as you said, like I do sympathize with some of these people, because like there was probably an issue there which they've gone to a doctor for, and a doctor really couldn't fix that, because I think, as many people know, doctors don't really have the nutritional training that they should. However, that is getting better over time. So they're kind of just like, just given a pill or like a potion and just being like, hopefully this will help. And then it leads to people kind of, going these more extreme routes. And then all of a sudden this thing is lifted, this thing that's like been holding them down for so long is lifted, and like, like this is now something that I believe in because of this one symptom that could have been fixed by like, it might have just been it could have been lactose intolerance or something like that just had been undiagnosed. Or the fact that some people, as much as for me, grains don't work for everyone. And they can cause people to be inflamed.
Yeah.
And so they'd be like, oh, I got rid of all rice grains and like things like that out of my diet, and I feel incredible. And do you feel incredible because you're cutting out great? Like you cut that out, but you could have felt incredible cutting it out and having various other foods within a diet, in your dietary pattern as well. You just you have done an extreme elimination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very worrisome. I think us in this health field that 5-10 years from now, what we're watching unfold with the carnivore diet. So I'm glad there's a lot of education and literature being provided, although some people want to turn a blind eye to it and believe what they want to believe, even though there's like scientific evidence and studies that have shown like better health outcomes given like fats from like polyunsaturated fats that are heart healthy versus like your saturated ones that come from primarily animal products. And so we just know what can happen, and it sucks watching it unfold is how many people are hopping onto this carnivore trend.
I do think as well, like we're going to see in quite a few years that the carnivore trend has very much like over time destroyed a lot of people's like health. Because at the beginning, like great, like you're feeling these benefits, but over time, like once you start like clogging the arteries with like the cholesterol and like the saturates and trans fats and things like that, you're going to see a lot more issues. But even like the main proponent for the carnivore diet, like Paul Saladino, is no longer carnivore. He's eating fruit and vegetables again. But also, I think it was very disingenuous of him that he started writing this book. Why? The book that he promotes, like the Carnivore Code. However, while writing that, gave it up because it wasn't working for him, but still kind of sold everything as, cut out everything, just eat raw meat, your raw liver, your raw everything, and then kind of turned his back on it, but still very much promoting the book at the same time.
Yeah, personally, I could never promote something that didn't have data to back it up and that I also follow. So, yeah, I don't know how people do it out there on the internet. And again, it's usually they create an issue for you, but they also sell the solution. It just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, no,
and I also want to add that I don't know how it is in like other countries, because like I know here in the States, like access to a registered dietitian like can be very helpful. And I know people that have seen me specifically, they look for a plant-based dietitian because they say, others don't understand. Some others, not every dietitian is like this, because they know usually if you go like 100% plant-based, vegan specifically, that first and foremost, it's like for animal welfare. And then the health benefits that come with it, they just seem like they can't relate, and they'd rather have someone that can relate, I guess. And that's why they look for that. But I wish people had more access to a registered dietitian so they could have helpful discussions and don't feel like they have to hop on the internet and look for this information themselves, which can lead them astray, because people can sound very convincing. I will give them that. I'm like, wow. They like almost sold me. If I didn't know any better, like they just sound so convincing.
Yeah, there's an air of confidence about some of these people that come on. I'm just like, oh, like it is very believable because like they got so much compassion towards it. You're kind of like, oh, like you almost fooled me. But I think, yeah, I don't know what it's like specifically in Australia, because I've never gone and sorted after one, but I know in England you do have access to dietitians. However, you may be put on a wait list for 6 to 7 months. So by the time you've actually got round to actually finding one, you've normally gone and found the information yourself, just from like sources that aren't the best, instead of like using, if you're going to use sources, maybe places like PubMed might be your good option to go to. However, that's not sexy. PubMed's not sexy. TikTok's sexy.
Yeah, no kidding, right? You don't have anyone on PubMed dressing around or shirtless dancing.
Exactly that. And I think as well, we're now in an age of information where if we can't get it in 15 seconds, we don't care. Like most people don't want to go sit and read for a whole entire study and then try and work out what the confusion is on like a peer-reviewed study when there's like a conclusion. But the people are still very confused, and I'm just like, I understand it. Like I don't like reading these things, but I also don't like seeing a conclusion that the conclusion's not really a conclusion. It's kind of like, we think this. I'm like, great, that's not helpful to anyone.
Yeah. There have been numerous times I've met with like my patients or clients, and I'm like, okay, so what's the latest that you've heard on the internet? Like, let's talk about this, because I also want them to be educated on how to find the resources. Like you mentioned, like PubMed is a good source, but also like, how can we go back to like our critical thinking skills? And when we hear something, question it, or like, is this accurate? Or why it might not be accurate? Are they selling something? And this is why they're telling me there's a problem. So like almost like helping them figure out how to decipher what's wrong, what's right, and then where to find the answer, do their own investigative work, or ask their dietitian. How can we like discuss this and what is accurate, what's not?
Yeah, I think trying to find accurate information, at least you're going out of your way as well to help people like know how to find information as well, because I doubt there's many people out there in that field that are taking the time to find out what's going on, to then then trying to like demystify this for their patients as well. People that are actually just taking the time to find out what's actually going on in the world, was sometimes it can be an enclosed echo chamber.
It is, and that's why I like jumping in front of it almost, because I know misinformation spreads like wildfire. For example, like the other week I went to some like retirement thing for an older coworker, and she announced that her dietitian was here from work. And so after the church service, when the lady stopped me and she wanted to talk about her diet, and they said the church could use the dietitian and all this stuff, but she's like, so my friend was telling me that I shouldn't eat pasta because I have high cholesterol, and just like, and she was just going off on these tangents. I go, whoa, let's step it back here. Like, what's going on? And like, so again, like, it's like people talk and they'll always, those scare tactics, they work. So when you hear something, you're going to remember it. And then you usually spread it like to the next person you hear or talk to. Like, you'll hop on the phone with someone. Oh, did you know? And then you'll share what you heard. So I'd rather it be accurate than like get in front of it, because again, we know people love to chat, which is great. People love to socialize. At the same time, they can easily spread that misinformation too.
Yeah, there's been various times, much like what you've just said with like the pasta, and where I've heard things, I'm like, that's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. Like there's a few of like these coming from family members as well, where they were like, oh, but potatoes are really bad for you. I was like, are they? It's like, since when?
Do you ever ask them when someone's like, oh, something's bad for you? And I go, oh, how? Like, I ask like genuine, like, how? Like, can you explain to me? Because I want to see like what they're able to regurgitate or tell me why it's bad. Because then when they can't answer it themselves, maybe they start questioning like, wait, why is it bad?
Yeah, no, I've done that a few times. Somebody was like, oh, like grapes are the worst fruit because grapes are full of sugar. And I was like, so like grapes are going to give me like whatever. I was like, how does that work? No, like, I don't know. I was like, come on, guys. Like, we need to be use our brains slightly. Like, if you don't know how it works and you haven't gone out to kind of educate yourself to find out if it's true, like, or you haven't asked somebody, like, and you're just taking this information from whatever source you've got it from, like, you can't go around telling people this, because if you don't know how it works, it might not be true.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
And I think like with that as well, I have seen many dietary trends, and they get seriously more and more bizarre every time. And I think one more serious ones I have seen, and I still see it once, not so much anymore, but I do see once in a while still as people on these 1,200 calorie diets, which isn't enough to sustain a fully grown adult, let alone just about a toddler. I'm just kind of like, there's so many issues with that. So I don't know if you want to jump into those issues.
Yeah. I think, again, there's a lot to unpack. So that's like, where do I even start? So I think even back then, I'm not going to like name call or like call out tracking apps, but like I know 10 years ago versus now, I think it's gotten even better, where you know how you have these apps calculate how many calories you need, and it'll spit you off the stuff if you just give them a few data points. And they used to give me a low amount. And this was before I was a dietitian. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess they know. But then now I'll plug it in just to kind of see like how it's been. how the apps are, and they're better, so I will give them that. But I know you say, what is it, kilojoules, that you're measuring your energy, and I have like 1,200 calories.
Oh,
So, like,
I have calories. However, Australia do kilojoules, and I don't understand kilojoules. And seeing that, like, I think Australia is the only place that does kilojoules. I haven't bothered to learn.
But that amount that you mentioned is very low, and oftentimes we're not even able to meet like our nutritional needs on that, meaning even like our vitamins, minerals. We then have to be very strategic about it. Like you said, it's the recommendation for barely a toddler, just like a 2-year-old. So how is an adult that's probably like easily 8 times the size of that supposed to thrive? I think they're barely surviving off that amount, but now they're supposed to thrive off that amount. And when someone adapts and is looking for that diet, they're probably looking for weight loss is what I'm assuming, and that's why they're searching for like what to do, how many calories do I need to eat. They're more mindful of like, how is this weight going to come off? They're probably exercising too. So now we got to count that they're burning more because they're exercising, but they also need their body to survive. So there's such thing called basal metabolic rate, that how many calories do we need just to lay on a bed and do nothing but breathe. And sometimes for some people, that's the 1,200 calories. So as soon as you get up out of the bed in the morning and start moving around, you're now exerting more calories. And then you exercise on top of it. So you become this big deficit, and people think, oh, good, so that means I should go even lower because that means I'll burn more. But then your body adapts to now eating such low amounts that you're no longer going to be burning off those calories because your body's kind of in a survival mode. It's like, okay, whatever they feed me now, I'm going to hold on to it because we might keep going lower and lower with calories. And then we get like symptoms of not getting enough calories, like brain fog, low energy. People sometimes have these like aesthetic goals of like, I want to be lean, I want to be muscular. But if we don't have the fuel to gain muscle, it's not going to happen. So I think just there's that lack of education of like how many calories we actually need. How do we calculate them? Because I know a lot of people struggle with like obesity, and they're going to these extremes thinking 1,200 is accurate because it's so popular. If you do a Google search, and they'll show you like how many results of like 1,200 calorie diet plans. Why are they still out there? Like, people are obviously still using it because someone is still putting it out there that this is the way to go. I know I talked a lot just now, but yeah, I struggle seeing that because it is such a low amount, and it messes with like our hormones going so low. It messes with our metabolism. There's so many like things that happen in the body when we eat such a low amount of calories. We usually don't hit our nutritional needs.
You actually mentioning hormones was actually my issue with it. Although I have many other issues with 1,200 calorie diets, like I have a huge amount of issues, but hormones is one of them, because I feel like if we do go back to like the whole kind of social media thing, we're seeing like, and I think this relates to girls more than it does guys. Guys have their own issues on another spectrum. But girls at a young age will see these kind of like, like these celebrities or these models, and like, these very photoshopped pictures as well. And they're kind of like, oh, I want to look like that. How do I do this? And then they're kind of like, well, I need to lose weight first. Forgetting that you could eat more and exercise and achieve the same physique. And then obviously, them being at such a young age, they're doing all these detrimental things to their bodies. And it's a time where obviously their hormones are all over the place, especially in their teenage years. And obviously restricting themselves to such a low calorie diet as well messes up those hormonal instincts as well. And it is just a recipe for disaster, especially with this younger generation, because they don't, like, adults don't know enough, let alone teenagers knowing enough about like, how to like thrive, survive, and achievable concepts for your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just the whole body image thing. And I know I know you're saying teenage years, but like as we get older, most people want I'm not going to say most, because maybe not most people, especially like these generations. Some people want kids and like family planning. So when we talk about messing with our hormones and how long we've been at such a low caloric range, it messes with our hormones, ovulation, fertility issues can happen. Not saying like that's a definite thing, but there are things to think about. And again, like there needs to be better resources of where we can find good information, especially the younger generation to find, because again, I'm sure they wake up first thing in the morning right on their phone and like they're constantly looking at like all these images that aren't real. Most of them don't know that. People Photoshop, and I know I have friends that like they don't want a photo posted of them unless it's edited, or they won't take a photo unless it's like a Snapchat filter on them. And it's gotten to be pretty bad. Like it's hard that we can't accept like what real looks like anymore. And that kind of goes to say like, we have these goals, we don't know how to get there. And these like aesthetic goals, we don't know how to get there either, because we just have misinformation. Like we talked about, we want that lean physique, but then we forget the step of we need muscle. We need to gain the muscle to show the lean muscle. And like, I think I'm kind of going astray, but I recently joined a Facebook group. I don't know if making myself seem old that I use Facebook still, but I'm on it quite often, I think more than Instagram. I joined a group where it's like girls who lift, something like that, but it's actually a very empowering group. And I think like any female who lifts or wants to get into like exercising, I do like it. People shouldn't be asking like how many calories should I be eating, but someone will say, I'm exercising this many days a week, I'm eating this much, and sometimes it's like a very low amount, like 1,200 calories, and people will jump in like, what? No, like you need to eat at least be eating like 1,800, 2,000 if you want to grow muscle. And like they're actually giving like helpful advice. Granted, they shouldn't be doing any specific advice because you have to leave that to the health professional, but it's so good to hear that like they're not telling them to underfuel, and it's just people will show like their muscle gains or what they've been doing, and it's like a very supportive group. It's like the most supportive group I've ever been a part of, because you can find like a lot of bashing and a lot of it, and you're like, oh, why am I even in here? Is there even a moderator in here to like kick these people out? But like, yeah, everything's been nothing but positive in there, and I think that's sometimes what
I do love that there is like a culture of positivity these days as well when it comes around body image, because sometimes that is quite hard to find. But I noticed in the younger generation, they're more mindful of like their health and how to go about things and stuff like this. And like it's very much like it's nice to see that there's like this positivity in comparison to like, let's say my generation, which is millennials, where we're not the most open to positivity. We're kind of like we're still in that it's fine to degrade each other, whereas these young people, I don't know what generation it is, especially like I don't know the terms for them all, but I've realized that these people are looking more and more into like their health, their fitness, and I think this is why we've seen like a rise of like run clubs recently as well, is the fact that like, which is just such a positive community and like an uplifting, supporting community of people that actually just want to, work out and just kind of thrive with each other, which wasn't a thing a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. I randomly joined this group, and like, it's fun to look in there just like knowing, because social media can be so dark and gross sometimes. Gross meaning like how mean people can be to like complete strangers, but like I just mentioned, it's like nothing but positive things. And if someone's like feeling down, like they just like blast you with support, and it's just like a good place for people to go to. And I'm like, I'm glad like this is one good thing that's come out of social media. There's some good things, but that's one of them.
I think it's one. I think in the I can't speak for everyone, but I would say in the landscape of guys, there's still a long way to go with like the positivity side of things. There's obviously I think like as obviously for guys, there's now this whole kind of you need to look this certain way, which is more like for some reason now become like a bodybuilder look more than like, you know, your average everyday or somebody that's a bit more toned. For some reason, bodybuilder has become the kind of norm, I guess, in the guy community, and like that's not attainable for most people. And also, people that hold on to, like, let's say, a six pack all year round aren't that happy. Because that's such a regimented diet. Like, you're not eating things.
You will not be having that one slice of pizza.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think the fitness standards in the guy community, we like there's a lot of people ripping each other apart still, and it is getting better. However, there's still a long way to go for empowerment, because I think, like, for us, like, we're showing these, you know, these big ripped people, and we're like, oh, I want to be like that, because maybe if I look like that, I could then have this, or I could do this, and it's unattainable for like most. And like for me, I eat a relatively healthy diet. Do I look like that? No. I work out near enough every day. Do I, in any like shape or form, have those genetics to form that kind of build? No. Like, and the thing like this, genetics comes down to it as well. And like, it's so nice that there is these groups out there for like empowering people. However, yeah, I feel like for guys, it does need to get there. There's still a long way to go, and I feel like that, you know, I am now part of a community with what I've created, where like there is that positivity. But if you like go outside of that and just go into like the subsets of like Instagram or Reddit or like wherever you go, you're seeing people just tearing each other still.
Yeah, that is a good view to look at it, that like maybe on your side of things you might be seeing things differently than the group girls who lift, because that brings up, I just thought of this, it was like, wow, I can't believe I'm saying this, because obviously it must not be the norm. There was someone who someone added a comment to someone's like reel, and then another random person, like, they kind of engaged in their own conversation, and the person goes, oh, you have really nice biceps. And I'm assuming they're both two males who identify as male, and so they're complimenting each other. I go, oh, that's really rare to see. I clicked on their photos, but I'm like, yeah, it's just, again, that like stood out to me, probably because you don't really see it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you don't see it as much. However, I have seen things like that where there is guys complimenting each other, and like it is a slow progression to it. But like, us guys actually, yeah, like I think it's what people want and like people are trying to do. But yeah, I think there's still this kind of, there is a long way to go, especially with like the whole toxic masculinity thing at the moment, where it might not be seen as like a good thing to start complimenting another guy without somebody saying something else that may be like, you know, starting off an issue. But however, like I'm all about complimenting other people if they're like trying, like even if they're doing the slightest bit to improve themselves. Fuck it, like, yeah, congratulate them.
Yeah, it'll keep them coming back. Like, they'll remember that. And
yeah. Like, yeah. I want to see people succeed, and I don't understand why people don't. But like, when you do see those kind of small comments that are like really, like, you know, it's just beautiful to see that that there is positivity there. I think one of the huge issues here, and I feel like you're probably going to have the same issue as well, and I think like you probably had discussions about it, is carbs. Carbs are real bad, apparently. What do you say to that?
They give me nightmares. Carbs aren't like inherently bad. Where I think this came from is maybe a couple of things. If someone cut out carbs, meaning went to a very low amount, they might have seen slight weight loss. So now all of a sudden we're attributing carbs like, oh, it made me gain weight in the first place. And now when I cut it out, not all, because it's not a significant amount, but you see some weight loss. But it's because you lose some of those glycogen stores that hold on to water. So it's just water loss that you're losing. As soon as you start eating carbs again, you'll go back to that normal state of having a little bit of water on you. Carbs provide us with fuel. So they're not bad, I think we need to think about the types of carbs we're eating. Some are more nutrient dense, some are not, because we can't hold a baked potato and potato chips on the same plate and say they're of equal value, of one is bad, one is good. They just have different nutrient densities to what's in each. One might be more calorically dense, one might have more stuff that you don't want in it, as much of it, depending what goals you have. Cakes, cookies, those are carbs. But also on the flip side, fruit, those are carbs. We need like the fruits. Potatoes are good, and I know potatoes are one of those foods that are demonized when they're a good amount of potassium. People should, for the most part, be eating more potassium. Depends, like if you have like kidney disease, that might be a different issue of how much. But then vitamin C. In the winter, potato can be a good staple food. But then instead of running to the store and buying your emergency packets and getting it that way, but we don't demonize that. But yet we demonize the food that has all this nutritional benefit to it. Again, we discussed earlier, we need fuel for muscle gains. We need it to work out. Carbs give us energy. Carbs give our brain energy. So there's a lot of good things that carbs bring. It's just choosing the carbs that are a little bit more nutrient dense than the other carbs. Not to say you can never have those other carbs, because I do love my cookies. So yes, I do eat them. Some people, when they see me for the first time, they're like, "Oh, you eat cookies?" I go, "Yes, I eat cookies." Why wouldn't I? I'm not insane. But so there's things we should eat more of, and there's some things that we should just eat less of, but we can have both.
Yeah, I can relate to that story about the whole cookie thing. I met somebody and they asked me what I did, and I told them what I did while I was eating. I think it actually may have been like a pizza at this point, and they were like, "You can eat that?" I'm like, "Of course I can eat that. I can eat anything." I can literally eat all these things, and it's absolutely fine to eat all these things. But people are so surprised when they see you eat something that wouldn't necessarily in their head shout health. They're kind of like, oh, you can have it. We're not robots. We do have needs and enjoyments, and some of us drink. But if you looked on the outsets of it, you'd assume that none of us do, because it's not considered a health drink. Although it's made of potatoes, some of them, or wheat. But people do get so surprised. They'll see me, I don't know, drink like a lemonade or something like that. They'll be like, "You can have fizz?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can. I just don't have this every single day." But
it's like your little daredevil over there drinking your little sugar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think but I think when it does come down to the carb conversation, it's once again the sugars as well. It's an umbrella term. There's various different types of carbs underneath this umbrella. There's various different types of sugars underneath the umbrella, and your whole plant food carbs are obviously they would be the best option for you. But if you want some bread or something like that, that's not a huge issue. As long as you're not doing a whole loaf a day.
Yeah, if you're just eating bread all day and then you're kind of boxing out everything else, it's we need to think about how can we not fill up on just bread and get a variety in our diet.
Exactly. And I think as well, carbs fuel us. We need to fuel. Our bodies run on carbs, our brains run on carbs, as well as various other nutrients as well, not just carbs. But we need to fuel ourselves somehow. And if you're looking to perform, or if you're looking to exercise, or you're looking to you've got a goal. Let's say you want to run a marathon. You're not running a marathon without carbs. It's not happening.
Yeah, good luck.
It's hard enough running it with carbs. Without people have these goals, and I think if you're doing short term amounts of lifting, you can probably get away without them. As you see, a lot of these people being like that are cutting out carbs and eating like a lot of like animal products instead. Yes, you're getting away with like lifting, but that's as far as I think you're going with that. Like you're not really gonna be able to do any kind of endurance or kind of like cardiovascular kind of fitness with on a long-term basis without.
Mm-hmm. I know sometimes people will say like they don't, sometimes going plant-based, they feel like it can be carb heavy, and they say they don't like feel good eating that many carbs, and there's various reasons. And like, I get it. Like, some people just don't feel good eating like that many carbs. Like, for me, I feel like I feel best on more carbs. That's just the way my body works. I don't know if it's because I'm active or what have you. So I notice the days where I don't eat as many carbs, I don't, mentally, I'm not all there. So like, there's just like things I can tell that I just don't perform optimally like I should. But there's so many reasons why carbs can be beneficial, and to what degree and what types of carbs are we choosing to make us feel best, and kind of how we stagger it throughout the day. Like, if you're just omitting carbs through the first half of the day and you're saving it for the night, I think there may be some issues for your energy levels, that you feel like you need to eat a lot more at night because you're kind of drained. And carbs, especially those simple carbs like cookies, chips, cakes, the things that get to our bloodstream quicker, our body knows like, oh, quick energy source. So you see that at night when you come home and you're like, okay, I need fuel. And we sometimes tend to eat more carbs at night if we've been restricting them all day.
No, absolutely. I think talk about those kind of carbs and what you just mentioned kind of brings me up to the next thing I get, which is obviously carbs. They're great, but they're packed with fiber. And I'm eating a ton of carbs at the moment. I'm eating beans, I'm eating pulses, I'm eating tofu, tempeh, everything you're telling me. But I feel bloated, I'm uncomfortable, and I can't stop pooing.
So meaning you're just having a lot of bowel movements, or like the bowel movements are like loose and they're coming out of you, you're running to the bathroom, or you're just saying they're consistent, they're formed?
They're consistent. These people are. I think the one that I get the most is I'm feeling bloated. I'm feeling uncomfortable. However, like, my bowel movements are more and more regular than they usually are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the main issue that I get with this. Not me personally.
Most people look at it as a good thing. I feel like I've seen some complaints in the carnivore world that they would rather just poop one time a day or once every 3 days, because apparently it's a very inconvenience to have a bowel movement. To each their own. I'm not going to judge what's enjoyment, what's not. But you will probably notice the more fiber you eat, depending on how gradually or how quickly you bring it into your diet, your bowel movement patterns can increase. Some people go like 3 times a day, some even 4. It just depends. And it depends what's comfortable for you, because fiber, there's 2 types of fiber, but one helps move things along the track, so you're able to excrete your stuff. And I feel like all of my clients have enjoyed going to the bathroom. I haven't had any complaints, because most times people, I'm not going to say most, a good chunk of people, they've had like digestive issues that they want to adapt a plant-based eating pattern to see if it will help resolve it or at least improve it. So typically deal with constipation, so the other end of things. But circling back to your question, as far as like, they can't stop going to the bathroom, they can't stop having bowel movements, not a bad thing. Is there more to that you want me to elaborate on?
Oh, no, not so much. I think as well, the people that are feeling like bloated in like their first 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks that I get, and it's people that switch overnight and go very kind of like, you know, like whole food heavy, that see these issues. Like, if you've swapped from like a diet which was, you know, like, let's say a very Western diet to more of a whole foods plant-based, you're consuming more and more beans, pulses than usual. Yeah, you're gonna have a bit of bloating, but your body's not used to what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going off of the bloating part I didn't pick up on. So yeah, the bloating can be an issue depending on how fast you introduce fiber, because here, like in the States, on average, they say Americans get about 14 grams of fiber a day. So typically when you switch over to a whole food plant-based diet, you're probably getting closer to like the recommended range of like 25 to 38 grams a day. That's double to triple. And if you're doing it overnight, I think double to triple of anything can be a lot for any reason, no matter what you try to implement. So oftentimes I tell people, slow and steady. Like, let's try to have maybe some lower fiber foods, increase water consumption because fiber needs it. It's like trying to flush your poop down the toilet without water. It's just, it might not go. So if we're dealing with the constipation end of things, we can run into problems. But the bloating, like you said, we're not used to eating those types of foods, primarily the fiber, which is feeding the good stuff in our gut, but at the same time, it can be a lot at once. And there's some more like gas producing foods than others. So it just depends. And it's really on an individual basis, kind of like that's how I work with my clients. And I'm assuming similarly to you, you kind of assess like what they're introducing, how they're feeling, see if we need to kind of cut back on one thing and introduce something else that might not be as high in fiber or just easier to digest so they can get on with their day.
Yeah, I think it's individual to the person on what they're eating. I think anything that we are saying is very individual to the person. Some people may take to like, a higher fiber diet like overnight and it'd be fine. But I know that's not the general consensus for most people. If you're able to do that, I don't think it's just slowly progressing over weeks and weeks, so you don't feel that uncomfortableness, and like like once your body slowly gets used to it, it's absolutely fine, and you shouldn't really have any issues. And I feel like if you carry on having issues, then there may be other issues there that would need to look at in a totally different mindset and concept. But I think like it's just a transition period the majority of the time for people. Then we have more plant milks. Like, we have almond, we have soy, we have rice, we have macadamia, we got coconut, we got tiger milk, we got pea, we got protein. Anything that we can find, we're going to milk it. However,
how awesome, right?
Yeah, that's like I see more and more crazier milks. Like I saw chickpea milk the other day. I was like, why? I was like, we didn't need this. Like, there comes to a point where there's some we just don't need, or we're just milking everything. However, is there a best one? Is there a worst one? I know for me, I love my oat milk. And yeah, I feel like I get this question a hell of a lot where people are like, is there a good one for me? I'm like, to be fair, I'm like, whatever works for you, whatever you enjoy. If you're having it with your coffee, have whatever you enjoy. Like, yeah.
Similarly to you, because like all of them have a different nutritional profile. So like almond milk will have more like a nutty flavor. And like the creaminess, the texture. So some people have difficulty with certain textures. So it just all depends. But if they're going from swapping out dairy, and that was like a good calcium source for them, I always recommend something fortified with calcium. Typically like your soy milks, your pea milks will be what was closest to the cow's milk, even in terms of protein wise. So I know people are obsessed with protein. So if they want to make kind of like the equivalent transition, pea and soy are the better options. And also I know, again, some people are now transitioning to plant-based diet because of health reasons, or they just want the health benefits that come with it. So again, there's so many milks on the market, which is awesome. There's a lot of flavors of the milks, and depending how much we're drinking, just maybe if you want to be more conscious of those like added sugars, if there's some that are very sweetened, and you're drinking a glass, 2 glasses a day, that might be more sugar than you're used to getting, or that you were used to getting on cow's milk, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe I'm just getting excess calories and I wanted to, like, what's going on? So just I always say, what were you doing before? What was the goal of, let's say, cow's milk in your diet? Like, what do you want to swap it out for? But like you said, if it's just like going in coffee, hey, pick whatever tastes best, because it's usually not, unless you like creamer with a splash of coffee, the ratios might be a little bit different.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite one personally?
Right now, so I want to like soy milk, but soy milk doesn't like me. I tried it many years ago and my throat closed up. I tried it twice. So right now, just going to wait it out a little bit, a few more years to see if I'm over that. But pea milk, I do like, I know you're in a different country, so Ripple, the pea milk, the brand Ripple pea milk is the one I like, and it's just like the unsweetened version, and I like using it for the base of my smoothies. They're fortified. Again, if there's things that you are getting from cow's milk, I always recommend, let's look at the nutritional similarities or differences to see, do you want it to be pretty close to cow's milk, and what can we get to optimize your diet and that nutritional profile. But yeah, I know you said, which one do you like right now?
Oh, I'm always an oat boy. Like, I love oat.
Oh,
However, like,
okay.
if I do want to mix it up, I will have a macadamia milk. Macadamia milk's huge over here. I think it's probably going above, like, your almond or like your soy would be your macadamia. I do enjoy pea milk as well. And actually, when I was back in the UK, I did try potato milk.
I've never tried that.
Yeah, it's called Doug. And it's actually real good. Like, it's real creamy.
Is it sweetened, or like do they sweeten the ones that they sell?
I'm not too sure if it's sweetened. I assume it probably is. But luckily it doesn't taste of potato, which I'm glad about, because there's nothing worse than having creamed potato in your coffee.
You'd rather eat it than drink it, I'm sure.
Exactly that.
I think in the States here, the most popular one is like almond milk. Again, I think it's more so what's available depending what stores you go to. And also, I think just not knowing what else is out there. Because you hear about almond milk, I feel like so often over here, that if you're going to make a swap, someone is probably already drinking almond milk. They're like, hey, maybe I should switch to almond milk. So there's not a lot of venturing that happens in the store. But yeah, now that there's, like, you've noticed, everything's getting milked. Like, there's so many different types, which is awesome because people have a variety. And so if they don't like one, they could try another.
Yeah, I think as well, like, for me personally, I'm not a fan of almond milk. Like, I think the first time I tried it is in the most British way, is swapping my my cup of tea with almond milk. Awful. One of the worst things I've ever done. But no, in a smoothie, it's great. But like, yeah, I can't drink that in like my coffee or my tea. It just doesn't sit right, or just a nutty taste, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree with that.
I think this is probably the last thing I normally get asked, which I don't normally give a straight answer to, because it's different every single day. Mm-hmm. But what is a day in a life of food for a dietitian?
Depends what day of the week it is. Obviously, there's some busier days than others. I would say, like, my go-to in the morning lately has been an English muffin. It's like a whole grain with like flax in it. So there's actually a good amount of protein, good amount of fiber in there. Usually like a nut butter spread. Chia seeds. I'm obsessed with doing seeds because I know the nutritional value it adds to our diets. I do seeds on there. Some kind of fruit on the side. I don't eat a lot right away in the morning, but I know I need to eat because I'm like, I'm going to be out the door. I'm going to be hungry soon. So I get a little bit of hungry, eat that. Then I have a protein shake and usually another fruit. And then as I'm listing this, like, I feel like I eat every 2 hours. One of my coworkers is like, I think I walk by your office every time now and you're not ever not eating. I'm just like, I know. I usually have like nuts on hand as snacks, popcorn. So I'll eat throughout the day before I get to my lunch. Lunch is typically maybe like a wrap of some sort, like a chickpea wrap. Maybe another fruit, sometimes chips on the side. I know people up in our chips. Maybe I'll have some chips with my wrap. Heaven forbid. And then throughout the day, I'm like drinking water, even like flavored water. I don't know what brands you have out there, but usually something good, something lemony. That's kind of my go-to. And then for dinner, usually something tofu based, like a stir fry. Tofu is my go-to. I really like it now. I think most people's story with tofu starts with, I freaking hated it, and now they're on the spectrum. I freaking love it.
That is, yeah, like tofu is like, it's one of my favorite foods of all time. Like, I never had the hatred for it. However, my mom did. So so when I first started bringing tofu into the house, she was like, I'm not eating that. But she had a really bad experience like 20 years prior with tofu at a restaurant where it came out as just slimy. And she was like, I'm not eating that. And like me and my sister gave it to her quite a few times in different ways. And now she eats tofu every single day.
Really? That's
so
awesome,
she had
though.
that initial hatred towards it. And I think people do have that hatred because people don't know how to season or cook with it, because it's such a versatile product, but also takes in different flavors. And if you don't know how to cook with it, it can be quite scary, I guess. It's kind of like, am I going to enjoy this? Am I going to like season it properly? Is it going to be good? Now I happily just eat that stuff raw. If I need to, I will. But yeah, I used to hate. I've never had the hating part yet.
I get where your mom is coming from, because I had a horrible experience, and for several years I didn't touch tofu because I'm like, if this is what it's going to taste like why waste my time? I'm not going to order anything with tofu because it's going to be a waste of my money if I don't like it. So I just like stayed away. And then finally I'm like, I think I should start trying to make tofu at home. And we did. And like the more we experimented with it, like I found ways to like really like it. So, and I can be a picky eater, I guess I can say that. So I can definitely relate when people are just like, I'm scared I'm not going to like it because like I don't like a lot of things, or like their palate, they're just so used to like eating what they eat. And you can kind of make it taste like what you like with the seasonings that you use for other things. Like whatever you would season if you're transitioning from eating the standard American diet to a plant-based diet, like the seasonings you could use for your steak, you could put it on the tofu, like you could make that transition pretty simple. But I think, like you said, just not knowing how to cook it can be very worrisome, because then you're like, well, now what am I going to have for dinner if I totally botched this? I'm going to have to throw it out if it doesn't taste good, or I'm stuck with it.
Are you a fan of tempeh? So that's the one I had a hatred towards at first, because I was like, oh, I don't know how to cook with this. It wasn't great tasting. It felt a bit odd in my mouth, and now I love it. But like when I first started, I was like, I don't know if I enjoy this.
I do like tempeh, even the first time I tried it. So that's one with tempeh I liked, and kind of like flip-flop for me and my boyfriend. So like we tried tofu. He actually liked it. I didn't. The way it was prepared, it was soggy. And then we had tempeh, and I really liked it. And he's like, I don't like this texture. I can't do it. And I'm like, that's weird. But I'm like, I love it. It's good. So again, like everyone's palate is different, and like just like preparing it, because there's so many ways to prepare something. So just like being open to it, and maybe if you know someone who's plant-based, have them cook for you. Maybe they might whip up something good.
I think, yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up in a second, but the last thing that I always ask to every guest that comes on is that you're feeling lazy, you're feeling worn out, but you need to eat, and you want something quick and you want something easy. What are you cooking?
What am I personally going to cook?
Yeah, what are you personally eating?
Good question. I feel like anything with beans is pretty easy. So like beans from a can, I'm not making them from scratch. Again, simplicity here in my household. A packet of rice and chopping up some veggies, throwing in a bowl, seasoning it with probably a Mexican seasoning. So
I love that.
Simple. I like simple.
Yeah, like to be fair, like the different answers we get on here is like they go from like some really kind of like in-depth foods to the most simplest, and I'm like they all work, and like the simple ones always sound the best as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or I even do, I think last night, like vegan nuggets, microwave some potatoes, and air fry some tofu. Or air fry some broccoli. And like that's like a perfect meal for me. Like, you know, like it's simple. And I think some people like stray away from like having those like ultra processed or like mock meats on hand. But at the end of the day, if like cooking stresses you out or you know you have those busy days, why not just have the fuel to get yourself through the rest of the night than having to worry about making this grand dinner? Just make it simple, even if you might have to rely on like a mock meat, because they're really not all that bad. Everyone is made differently, depending on what your goals are. Again, I always talk, what are your goals? How can we fit this in? Because I'd rather someone fuel themselves than go to bed hungry because they're just so scared to eat something that may not fit what they think is like a healthy diet.
I love that. Where can we find you? For anyone that's...
Wisconsin, my address is I'm just kidding. Yeah. Instagram, I guess. So Plant Healthy Habits RD. I am there. Kind of active on there, I guess. I love when people message me off things. I think like even Callum with you, like inviting me onto your podcast, it's so fun to be able to connect with people that you wouldn't otherwise. I love talking to people. So I love meeting people, and it's nice when I say social media can be a bad thing. It's also a good thing because it can bring people together, and like, you know, our paths wouldn't have crossed otherwise. And so I also think same with the people that message me on Instagram. It's just nice to have genuine conversations that I wouldn't have met them otherwise.
And I completely agree with that. And you kind of create like this little kind of community as well, which is kind of like then you become really good friends with these people that you've never met, and, which I absolutely love. Like I have a few people that I'm like, I feel like I know personally. I feel like I've met them before, but we've never crossed paths in any way, shape, or form. But it just feels like we've known each other for ages.
Yeah, it can be fun.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Will you enjoy the rest of your day? Because it's going to be bedtime for me.
Yeah, you enjoy your evening.